Well, hello everyone and welcome to this week's Discussions with Dolf. I am in the heart of Jakarta. In fact, right now I'm sort of triangulated between the Kempinski Hotel behind me, the Pullman Hotel where I'm staying on my right here, and on the left you've got the Grand Hyatt and the Grand Plaza Indonesia, one of the premier, in fact the premier shopping center here in Jakarta. It's not the heart of the financial center, that's a couple of kilometers down the road. In fact, we spent a bit of time there yesterday. As some of you have been following me know, we've had a very successful time here in Indonesia, met some incredible people and also put on a large event here. But the thing I want to talk with you about today is one of the problems that Jakarta faces. Jakarta has a nighttime population of around 10 million people and a daytime population of around 15 million. And that means that every morning some 5 million people commute into town, and every evening another 5 million commute out. And as you can imagine, that causes horrendous congestion on the roads. In fact, I think statistically this is the third most congested city in the world, the number one being Mexico City. I've personally never traveled there. I'd like to see it sometime. I'm not even sure what number two is, but I know that congestion here is horrendous. You described how far away you are from somewhere, not by the number of kilometers left to go, but how long it takes you to get there. I had a meeting yesterday that I had to get to. I could see on my map app that it was exactly 3.9 kilometers away, and it took exactly 48 minutes to get there. You can do the math yourself. You never get out of first gear here. So that is a major problem. And in the scene behind me, you can see what it's like almost all the time, day and night. There is massive congestion here. And one of the things that I've talked with a lot of you about for years, if you've been following me that for long, is that school often doesn't teach us what we need to know to get on in life. In fact, I've talked about financial literacy and how we might spend 15 years at school and not have 1 hour devoted to teaching people how to be financially free or how to have passive income. But in a similar vein, school teaches kids how to learn facts and figures that hopefully they'll be able to harness one day by swapping their precious time for money to regurgitate those facts and figures, even though anyone who knows anything about the world knows that you can look up things on Google. You don't even have to type it in anymore. You can speak it into one of those apps with names like Siri and Alexa and goodness knows what to get whatever answers you want. But schools continue to teach this stuff instead of teaching creative problem-solving techniques as to how you can solve problems that come up in real life. So, most people that I know of speak of the congestion problem in Jakarta and always complain about it and how long it takes to get places, and they have all negative things to say about it. But there's one man I met 2 days ago. He came up with a solution for this problem, and I alluded to it in a posting I had on Instagram where I showed a traffic jam. Now, this was a video, and it showed that the motorbikes could get through the traffic faster than cars. In fact, motorbikes have about double the speed. So what he did essentially is he created the Uber of motorbikes, and it's called Go-Jek in this country, G-O-J-E-K, Go-Jek. And if you think that's a crazy idea, and who would take it? Listen, he went from essentially zero 2 years ago to a $2 billion valuation. Go-Jek provides between 500,000 and 1 million rides every day. It is astounding, but here's the really smart thing that Go-Jek did. They didn't just claim that they were a transportation service for passengers. They provide transportation. So if you need a prescription, you get your Go-Jek to get it for you. If you need your groceries delivered, you do that. If you need to get yourself somewhere, of course, you do that, of course. But it's anything that needs transportation, many documents, courier type service. They provide it. So instead of becoming a passenger transportation service, they became a transportation service of things. And I think that's very smart thinking, because you've always got to learn to think outside of the box. And some of you might be saying, well, what has that got to do with real estate? Well, obviously it's got a lot to do with it. And because right now in front of me, you can't see it here, but they're building an MRT, they're building an underground. They haven't had one up to now. And I remember going to Hong Kong for years before they had an underground, and that's one of the most densely populated places on this planet. And they had similar congestion problems, but when they got the MRT in Hong Kong, and it goes for many tens of kilometers now, it removed a lot of people from the streets and put tens of thousands of them at a time in all these carriages. In fact, now the MRT in Hong Kong is pretty congested, but if you could only imagine what the streets would be like if they didn't have that. So that's the first thing. The MRT is being laid on here. It should be finished, so they say, in another 18 months or so. That's going to alleviate a lot of the congestion you have on the streets here. But like we've seen in other cities, most recently for me in Phoenix, where we put in a light rail system, the values of real estate along the light rail system, and especially close to the stops, went up at a faster rate than those properties that were not along the light rail system, and certainly not near some of the stops. And it's obvious why. I don't have to explain why. Those places become more popular because they're more readily accessible by a larger group of people. So we have a situation here with the MRT going in that's going to alleviate it, but properties along the route might get an increase in value that is faster than other properties. And by the way, properties have come up a lot here in Jakarta. They've come off the top a bit in the last couple of years, but the rise up until then has been phenomenal, and my prediction is that it's going to collect it. You only have to spend a little bit of time here to realize that unlike most Western nations, I'm thinking all throughout Europe and the United States and Canada, where we have essentially a graying population, this part of the world has an average population that is extraordinarily young, and that means you've got masses of people entering the workforce and going through all those things where they want to acquire fridges and sound systems and you name it. So the GDP is reflected in that. When you have a graying population, old people often don't spend very much. They get set in their ways. They want to listen to their cassette tapes or 8-tracks or whatever, even CDs. They've gone the way of the dodo now in many parts of the world. Anyway, and I see as my camera is falling over in the breeze, I will hang on to it a bit so that that doesn't happen. But the point I really want to get across in this video here is that there's always a solution to any problem. And maybe next time from Jakarta, I'm going to show you what some people are doing that's the analog of Go-Jek, a way of providing transportation for when you've got a high demand for people to move around the city, but you don't have enough infrastructure to get people around, and how they can do it at a speed that is generally a lot higher than you can in a vehicle. You can see behind me it's pretty congested still. And by the way, this, I didn't select this time of day so that it would be congested. It's like this almost all the time. And then how you've got the analog where you can also do something for the accommodation problem that inevitably cities like Jakarta face. And these may not be solutions that work everywhere, folks. I'm not suggesting that Go-Jek could take off and function properly in lots of other cities. I think in many parts of the United States, most people wouldn't want to tolerate a ride on a motorbike where you can't really take many packages. You're vulnerable to the wind, and if it rains, you certainly get wet. I've seen plenty of instances of that happening here. But there are solutions, and I just want to remind you that things are moving so fast. For most of you, Uber is something that's come up very recently, and who would have thought that Uber would have taken over in the way that it has recently? But remember, we've also got driverless cars coming, and they say that within 5 years, maybe every Uber driver will be made redundant because cars won't need drivers anymore. And the only question I pose related to that, and the thought I want to leave you this week, is if we had an analog happening with Go-Jek, how would we ever get around if we had driverless motorbikes? Anyway, there's a thought for you. We've run out of time. I want to wish you, until next time, as always, successful investing. Thank you very much.